Now, usually I'm not much of a mumbler. I'm not much of the complainer. But you're telling me 5 NBA teams in the Western Conference, 5 Western Conference teams got a Christmas game, and none of them were the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't know what to say. Let's just talk about it right now on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. As me and Joe Mullinex, my co-host, who's out today, had stated recently, we kind of shifting things up a little bit in the month of August. Won't be recording as much as the usual, but we'll get back to that as things start to pick up in the Grizzlies world. But this is the off season, not just for the players, it's off season for us too. I mean, I'm out here covering golf. I've been out there at TPC Southwind in Memphis over the last few days on the golf course. So that's why you haven't seen me much this week. But I want to thank you all for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Grizzlies each and every day, everywhere. And remember, today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Look, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter the promo code LockedOnNBA for a free white tick hat. Check that out. You get a free white tick hat with any purchase. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. I'm going to promise you some good content on today because I got some things to say. And we alluded to what we're going to talk about first, but also in this edition of Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about a couple other things. One of those things is catching up with Luke Kennard. I had a talk here actually on the golf course at Spring Creek Ranch earlier this week with Luke Kennard. Going to fill you guys in on what was said, what we were talking about, what was written, and what was not written. We had a long conversation with Luke Kennard. So we'll talk about that in the upcoming segment. And then later on, we're going to have a little fun with Santi and Jaren, as Team USA and Spain are set to play on tomorrow, actually, in Spain in an exhibition match. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But let's get to this whole Christmas thing. Because, okay, I get it, Dad. I get that Ja Morant, 25-game suspension. He's the star on the Grizzlies. He's the one that brings in the people. But guess what? The Grizzlies, when they played the Warriors last year on Christmas, it's their 32nd game of the season. Little old me, I looked at this two ways. Yes, I wasn't going to be surprised that the Grizzlies didn't get a Christmas game, but I thought it would be 4 Western Conference teams. We'll get to the 5th, and we'll have that conversation in a second. But let me say this first. I thought it was going to be 4 Western Conference teams. When I found out it was 5, you know what I thought? That's a slap in the face. That's oh, yeah, we know you won 50-plus games the last 2 seasons and you finished with a number 2 seed in the Western Conference the last 2 seasons. But guess what? We don't care. You're still not worthy of a Christmas game. And here's what I take from it. I looked at it 2 ways. I just touched on the first angle. That was the side of it where if it was 4 Western Conference teams, like, okay, I can understand a little bit why the Grizzlies probably won't end up with a Christmas game. Then there was the other angle, which made me think maybe they will get a Christmas game because Ja Morant returning, playing with that edge, it'll be around the 30th, between the 30th and the 35th game. So you're talking about a guy who just got back, a superstar, is probably going to have his legs under him at that point. And the Grizzlies, probably their first big national TV game since in Ja's return, right there on Christmas Day. You remember what happened on Christmas Day last year with Ja? It was when he announced his signature secret. So I'm sure Ja One is going to have some special Ja One that's going to come out on that day on Christmas, and it was perfect. It was a perfect marketing opportunity for Ja. It was a perfect marketing opportunity for the Grizzlies in the NBA. But The NBA decided to look the other way. And here are the 5 teams. The Denver Nuggets, self-explanatory, NBA champions. The Los Angeles Lakers, one of the biggest brands in the NBA, and they have LeBron James, who has been arguably the biggest brand in the NBA for the past 20 years. Completely understandable. The Golden State Warriors. Again, if the Lakers have been the biggest brand in the NBA, possibly historically, right along with the Celtics and whatnot, the Golden State Warriors have been the biggest brand in the NBA the past 10 years. And Steph Curry has arguably, right up there with LeBron James, you can argue either way, it's arguably been the biggest brand in the NBA during that stretch. Again, completely understandable in my eyes. 2 spots left. 2 more teams got Christmas games. The Phoenix Suns made arguably the trade of the summer. Went out and got Bradley Beal, got rid of Chris Paul, and now you have a trio or quartet, depending on if you think DeAndre Ayton is good. You got Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, 3 guys who've averaged more than 27 points per game in the NBA at certain points in their careers. So it's okay. The Suns are a buzzy team. I get that. Then there's the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic. I want to understand. I want to, but they didn't make the playoffs last season. Okay, well, maybe they're like the Suns. Maybe they went out and got some big-time name. With all due respect, you see the Tennessee on my hat, so I can't disrespect my fellow Vol. But their biggest move probably was going to get Grant Williams. Love Grant Williams. Covered Grant Williams in college. But getting Grant Williams, getting Bradley Beal, you get my drift. My point is Mavs over Grizzlies for Christmas. Luka, sensational superstar. Ja Morant, sensational superstar. Kyrie Irving, superstar. Jaren Jackson Jr., not quite superstar yet, but playing with Team USA, winning Defensive Player of the Year, getting this stage in the first 25 games where he's going to be a focal point, it's set up for a Christmas showdown where Jaren Jackson Jr. will likely be averaging somewhere around 20 points per game and having a bigger breakout year, I think. Then Desmond Bane. Remember, Desmond Bane last season, pre-toe injury, was averaging 25, 5, and 5. 25 points per game is what you really should focus on. He ended the season averaging 21. Still a great year. But the point is, the Grizzlies have a superstar in Ja. They have an all-star in Jaren Jackson Jr. They have a rising star in Desmond Bane. And I think Desmond Bane kind of tilts it a little bit. When you're talking about Mavs, talking about Grizzlies, Desmond Bane is your trump card, I would say. So basically, what I got out of it, and I'm sure this isn't what the league is directly saying, because at the end of the day, the Mavs are playing the Suns on Christmas Day. Because you got to think about storylines. That's the other angle of this. But to me, it sounds like the Mavs are just simply more marketable. And is that true? Let's be honest. Is that true? I don't think so at this point. Not while Ja Morant's on the team. I mean, Luka is fantastic. And I've been in an arena with both of those guys. Both of those guys get plenty of love. But my point is, the Grizzlies are still very marketable. The Grizzlies are winning games. And Ja Morant on Christmas Day should be there. If the league was going to choose 5 teams, the Grizzlies should have been on there. Storylines, okay, let's get back to that. I know thing works. You got, the Suns and the Mavs, the whole Luka, Devin Booker, little rivalry thing, Kyrie and KD being former teammates and all of that. It's like, okay, it's a nice little touch on that game. The Nuggets, of course, defending champions, you got to put them on there. But who would the Grizzlies have played? It's a good question. I think you could have made an argument the Grizzlies could have played the Lakers, the team that beat them in the playoffs. We saw how LeBron had some things to say, after that series, with his little subtle jab. He didn't say anything directly. LeBron's going to always keep it player on the professional tabs, but you saw the indirect blow on Twitter when he tweeted out, I think it was the Nas lyrics. Austin Reeves recently said it felt good beating the Grizzlies. That would have been a good one. Then you could have ran it back with the Warriors angle because it's not old yet. Because, by the way, on that Austin Reeves post, I think Bleacher Report posted a clip of Austin Reeves saying it felt good beating the Grizzlies because, they talk so much trash. Steph Curry liked that post. So you could have played into let's get back to this Grizzlies Warriors thing. Played into that a little bit more because Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green, as long as that trio is over there, it's gonna be a little fun. No more Dylan Brooks, but still, it's gonna be fun. There was an opportunity to put the Grizzlies on Christmas Day, but quite frankly, the league chose not to. And now I can't wait to see the national TV slate because the Grizzlies last season, trendy team, got a lot of love on national TV. Let's see what it looks like now. I guess this last season is considered a down year in the eyes of people on the outside. But again, I've touched on how I don't understand that pretty much because, yes, it's a down year in terms of you didn't repeat your success from getting to the second round standpoint, but you also had more injuries this season. It's part of the game. It happens. But with all that being said, I feel like the Grizzlies should have been playing on Christmas Day if there were going to be 5 teams. If it was the first 4 teams that I mentioned, if it was the Suns, the Nuggets, Lakers, Warriors, you wouldn't have gotten much from me. But the Mavs over the Grizzlies Christmas Day, I ain't feeling that one too much. Not feeling that one too much. Let me tell you what I am feeling. I am feeling this conversation I had with Luke Kennard. He put me onto some things that I really didn't really remember, not just about him, but just in general. So a good talk with Luke Kennard recently on the golf course. We're going to talk about that coming up next. But before we get to that, I got to talk to you about Birddogs because, look, Birddogs is where I go to get my shorts laid. And like I said, I've been on the golf course all week. It was raining earlier in the week, but it's hot right now. It's hot this week. It's going to be hot all weekend long on the golf course. So you know what shorts I'll be wearing? I'm going to be wearing my Birddogs, of course, because Birddogs is where I go. Because, look, Birddogs make you look good. You can go get the stretch khaki shorts. They're designed to fit a little bit slimmer through the thigh and leg. So they're going to give you that sculpted look. Going to make it look like some of you guys that do skip leg day. Going to make it look like you don't skip leg day. And then they fit better than the regular shorts out there that are made of that stiff, restricted cotton. Look, Birddogs fix this issue by inventing the knit fabric. And look, it looks just like khaki, but I'm telling you, it can stretch so you can get that slim fit without having to sacrifice movement. You can still do a little wiggle a little bit, but Birddog also uses an anti-sweat, stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, which comes up really important right now if you're in Memphis because it is hot. Go to birddogs.com right now /LockedOnNBA or enter the promo code LockedOnNBA. That's LOCKED on NBA for a free white tech hat. That's right. You're not a tumbler this time. You get you a free white tech hat. All you got to do is go over to birddogs.com /LockedOnNBA. You don't want to miss this opportunity. Coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk Luke Kennard. Had a real good talk with him. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am your host, Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Going solo today. No Joe Mullinax. It's just me. So hopefully you're having a good time talking to me. We had to get that Christmas stuff out of the way because I wasn't really feeling that. But talked to Luke Kennard recently, right? Of course, if you read the story at Commercial Appeal, you saw basically how Luke Kennard is a connector on this team is what I wrote. And, okay, Steven Adams is a connector on this team. Ja Morant is a connector on this team. Desmond Bane is a connector on this team. But Luke Kennard gives me this all-around connector vibe because, one, if you want to talk about the skill set, the shooting really expands what the Grizzlies can do and what they're capable of doing, and it kind of decreases the options that opponents have when going against Memphis on the offensive end. So he kind of connects the offense in that way. And then there's the other connections, in the offseason, right? With the golf. If you're familiar with the Grizzlies, you haven't heard me or probably anyone else talk much about Grizzlies players in golf. And that's because they don't play it much. The Grizzlies don't have a lot of guys with good golf games on the team. But you know what? They went out and got Marcus Smart, who the rumors out there that he can play a little bit. And they went out and got Luke Kennard at the trade deadline in February. Luke Kennard's been playing since high school. Got a nice little golf game. I saw him a little bit out there. So now you're talking about a guy who can be an off-the-floor connector as well. When the Grizzlies go on a road trip, a long 7-day road trip, instead of going out and having young fun, he's like, let's go to the golf course. So let's go do some other stuff. It just adds that extra flavor, I think, to the locker room. But then here's another one. Here's a really good one. And we'll talk more about this later because I'm not going to dive too deep into it right now. Got so many other avenues to touch on this. But I don't think we've touched on the fact that Luke Kennard and Derrick Rose were teammates in Detroit. And not only that, because some of you are going to be like, well, duh. Yeah, I know they were teammates. But talking to Luke Kennard about it, there was some sync there in that season. Yes, I know Detroit struggled that year, but Derrick Rose led the Pistons in scoring. By the way, he was coming off the bench. 18 points per game coming off the bench. That season, if you look at it, that was Luke Kennard's best offensive year. Career high, I think he averaged like 15.8 points per game that year. Shot the ball really efficiently and really well from range. Those two were on the floor a lot together. And guess what? Yes, I know I've kind of been an advocate for Luke Kennard starting the season and starting lineup and whatnot. But eventually, maybe at some point, Luke Kennard will be coming off the bench. And even if he starts the season off the bench, he'll be playing in a lineup that's likely going to include none other than Derrick Rose. That experience, that chemistry, that scoring ability between those two can help that bench unit go from, because it wasn't a bad bench, could go from mediocre to really good. I think that really can happen. And it's because now the Grizzlies, as I've said in the past, they do their homework when they go get guys. When I say the Grizzlies do their homework, they went out and got Derrick Rose this past summer, right? And if you're familiar, Derrick Rose has had a lot of highs in his career. He's also, went through certain things, whether it was a situation at Memphis, whether it was the case. I won't, say too much about it because it was dismissed, but he also had, kind of like a defamatory case against him. I think it was like 2013, 2014, 2015, in that range. But with all that being said, Derrick Rose has went through his fair share of things, and the Grizzlies did all their homework to make sure the guy that they see on TV and the guy that you see the quotes in is the exact guy that the team is getting. But not only just that, the Grizzlies knew that, yeah, Derrick Rose and Luke Kennard have played together before, and they played well together. Pair those guys on the bench with Santi, with Brandon Clark when he's healthy, with X potentially now. Then you throw in, one of those guys is going to look good, I think. I mean, Zaire Williams, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy. Just get a good season from one. Doesn't have to be all three. If it's all three, that's great. Now you're really cooking. Now you really got some options. But if it's just one of them, man, I don't have to tell you. You go from having a 17th, 18th, 15th, 14th, middle of the pack bench to a 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, potentially top 10, top 8, top 5 type of bench with scoring from all levels, which is important because you got Luke Kennard, You got Derrick Rose putting pressure on the rim. You got Santi mixing it in and out from all three levels. I think Luke Kennard, just from the conversation that we had, he's excited about the Grizzlies this season. One of the most noteworthy quotes that came from the conversation with Luke Kennard is basically him saying this. I'll read it to you. He said that we got some really good additions this summer, and I think they're going to help our team a lot. We're really excited. I know we have a really good team this year with our coaches and everybody just buying into what we want to do. We have a good chance of being a really special team this year. So us off to the side a little bit, was talking to Kennard about his, previous experience. Playing in Detroit. Made one playoff appearance there the year Blake Griffin kind of carried the team. But we also talked about this potential of Luke Kennard having the ball in his hands more. Something he, quite frankly, he said he's willing to accept any role. But if he's put in that position, will bode well for not just him, but the Grizzlies. We saw how that's helped Desmond Bane. Luke Kennard, again, going back to when he averaged 15 points, all this ties together. Going back to when he averaged 15.8 points in Detroit. That season was the year the ball was in his hands the most. He got traded eventually to the Clippers, and as wonderful as that opportunity was for him, with the Clippers, there's a lot of catch and shoot. There's a lot of spot up. Open shots, attacking closeouts, things like that. It wasn't much pick and roll and things like that. That's what the Grizzlies are kind of trying to get him more into. So it's going to be fun to see that. We'll talk more about Luke Kennard. Go check out the story on commercialappeal.com if you want to read the full story about Luke Kennard out there at the golf course on Spring Creek Ranch. But we're not here to talk golf. You heard me in that segment mention a name, and that's Santi Aldama. Santi and Jaren, Team USA versus Spain coming up on tomorrow. Let's talk about that for a little bit coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am your host, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. And, man, we got to talk Santi and Jaren a little bit as Team USA and Spain get ready to tee it off on tomorrow. And now, hopefully, fingers crossed that both players actually play in that game, because Team USA is actually playing Slovenia on today, on this beautiful Saturday. And then on tomorrow, they'll take on Spain. So who knows? Maybe Team USA rests some guys and Jaren plays one of the games or whatnot. So hopefully we get this Santi versus Jaren thing. But even if we don't, let's talk Santi a little bit, man. Let's talk Santi a little bit, because I'm watching the Spain game against Slovenia. By the way, Spain beat Slovenia by 20 points. Slovenia, that's led by Luka Doncic, by the way. And yes, Luka was in foul trouble that game, so I got to throw all that out there. So Luka didn't play his full array of minutes in that one. But Spain is also the number one team in the FIBA rankings right now. The number one team in the FIBA rankings, this is a fact. This is not opinion, by the way. The number one team in the FIBA rankings right now is being led by Santi Aldama from an offensive production standpoint. How about that, right? We've seen Pau Gasol. We've seen Marc Gasol lead Spain. Right now, it's Santi Aldama from a scoring standpoint, from an assist standpoint, and on the glass. Let's get into it. He finished in that 99-79 victory over Slovenia. It's an exhibition game, so, the competition is going to tee up a little bit. Teams are still tinkering with lineups and all that stuff, so don't take too much from it, because we're going to have all August. We're going to have September to really dive into how these guys are playing in the World Cup. But basically, what we have right now, Santi Aldama, a game high, 18 points. But check this out, Grizzlies fans. This is what you're really going to like right here. 7 assists. Santi Aldama, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Taylor Jenkins, I'll never forget this. Asking Taylor Jenkins when Jaren Jackson Jr. was out and the Grizzlies had to fill that starting role. He was talking about how Santi Aldama, after it was known that he was going to be the starter, how Santi Aldama best filled the role from, an offensive standpoint with the shooting, defense, versatility, and then he said playmaking. And I started thinking to myself, we haven't seen Santi Aldama do much playmaking. It's the reason he was drafted in the first round. He put the ball on the floor a little bit. Saw it in spurts if you watched him down there with the hustle, but we haven't seen Santi playmaking a lot. But then I watched the Grizzlies this past season. You saw those. You saw it, the behind-the-back passes and things like that. Look real good for a highlight tape. But still, my takeaway was flashes. Didn't see a lot of them. But then you know what I realized? Wasn't really his role with the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, Tyus Jones, those are the people who had the ball the most in their hands. Santi Aldama with the Grizzlies was mostly, catch and shoot, attack mismatches when teams switch those little guards on you, take advantage of the baby food, get to the rim, dribble drive. If they close out, put it on the floor a little bit, do that nice little finger roll he got in his bag. But with Spain, as you'll see, he's been put in a position to do, to operate out of the pick and roll and do some of this dribble handoff stuff. Spain cuts a lot, and Santi is finding guys. And it makes me think, can we see the Grizzlies do a little bit more of that with him? Because it's in the bag. And this isn't for comparison's sakes, because I'm going to tie this in together, because I don't want people to think Santi or Jaren when I say this. But Jaren Jackson Jr., we talked a lot about him. We talked about one of his main weaknesses. Not the foul trouble stuff. That's a national narrative. The real main weakness of Jaren Jackson Jr. up to this point is playmaking. Teams have doubled him. We've seen offensive fouls. We've seen travels. We've seen bad passes. We've seen more turnovers than assists. That needs to change for Jaren Jackson Jr., and it probably will. But Santi, that ain't a problem. Just like the other way around, defensively, Jaren, Defensive Player of the Year, Santi has struggled a lot in the NBA up to this point defensively. So there's a difference there. But watching Santi play early on, and we'll see how everything unfolds over his full time out there with Spain. Watching Santi play early on, it's leading me to believe that I wouldn't be surprised if this is your starting power forward and center combo one day for the Grizzlies. One day. That day ain't today, because love what Steven Adams is doing, and I think the Grizzlies need Steven Adams this season. And we're going to have a Steven Adams episode very soon here. So, it's not to take anything away from Steven Adams. It's more of the focus on these two young guys, Jaren and Santi, who've been really good. Can't wait. I really want to see them play against each other, because they're probably going to be guarding each other. They've guarded each other a lot in practice. I've asked a couple of the guys. I've asked Dez, again, going back to the talk ahead with Luke, talking to Luke. Who's going to win the matchup, man? Like, you guys see it in practice a little bit more than we do. So tell me something. And at the end of the day, of course, it's all fun and games. But when I asked that question, didn't really register in my head that Dez and Luke are definitely Americans. So they're going to side with Jaren because he's playing for Team USA. But if it was flipped around, I'm sure if Santi was playing for their native countries or whatnot, they would choose Santi based on the way that they answered the question. But I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup. I think Santi Aldama, this is a real growth year. We saw the leap from year 1 to year 2. I think there's another leap in there from year 2 to year 3 as he gets comfortable with playing defense the way the NBA plays it, as he gets more comfortable with showcasing that playmaking that we saw flashes of, that Spain is seeing a lot more of. But I'm going to be tuned in this weekend. You can bet that me and Joe are going to recap what happened with Santi and Jaren out there if those two play against each other, even if just one of them play, because the game will be televised. So make sure you check it out as well. And I'm going to check it out as well. But, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies this week, me and Joe Mullinax should be back with you on Monday. We're going to talk everything Memphis Grizzlies, including Santi, Jaren, and everything else going on with the team in the offseason. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever. See you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.